Welcome into the channel, everyone. Today we're talking the one big beautiful bill, where it sits now, and the major blow it was dealt on Thursday, June 26th. Can the GOP scramble to meet its July 4th deadline? And of course, this is the Tax Talker channel, so what does it mean for the tax legislation in the bill? Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your questions. Let me start with a little political wisdom that you'll hear for some Washington pundit types. Probably won't be the first time you hear it this week. In real time, a bill that is headed for the president's signature or doomed for political gridlock and eventual failure look pretty much the same to the outside observer until it's passed. That's just the nature of these battles. Success and failure look pretty much the same until you've arrived. Now let's get to the headline. On Thursday, June 26th, the Senate parliamentarian struck down three major provisions within the bill. Why? Well, because they violated the Byrd Rule, meaning they did not meet the strict requirements of the budgetary reconciliation process, the process by which Republicans hope to pass this bill without needing the Senate filibuster-proof majority of 60 votes. So what's a parliamentarian? What does a bird have to do with it? What's that got to do with tax law? Yeah, let's break that down. The point of the budgetary reconciliation process is to get budgets approved without needing the full 60 votes. This process is governed by the Byrd Rule, which sets forth several rules that any bill that passes using the budgetary reconciliation process must abide by. So the Byrd Rule in a nutshell is that the bills passed using this process must have to do with the budget. They cannot add to the federal deficit after 10 years' time, and they cannot have to do with Social Security. Finally, this process is governed by a nonpartisan individual called the Senate parliamentarian. This individual is Elizabeth McDonough, who was, I think, appointed in 2012. The news that some of the provisions of the bill were tossed out by the parliamentarian was not surprising. This was widely anticipated. Political types even have a term for this. They call this whole phase the bird bath, where the bill is carved apart and you have parts that are tossed out called bird droppings. Very clever stuff. What becomes key, though, is whether the bill can survive being carved up and what specifically got tossed out. In this case, all three items tossed out were revenue raisers. They bring in revenue, which is key when we're talking about the tax legislation aspects of this bill, which are mainly all cuts. First, there was a plan to sell federal land. That got tossed out. Second, there was a plan to defund the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. That got tossed out. And third, and most importantly from a revenue raiser standpoint, there was a change to Medicaid funding that would close the so-called provider tax loophole. Now, the GOP has three choices. They can leave the parts of the bill tossed out, they can try to rewrite them to comply with the Byrd Rule, or they can fire the parliamentarian. Let's take that third one first, because you'll see it either decried on MSNBC or demanded on Fox News. But I think realistically this is a non-starter. It's the kind of thing a political firebrand likes throwing out there, but in reality it would completely undermine the goal of getting this done by July 4th. And you'd use up all kinds of political capital navigating that controversy and something that's never been done. So I think you'll see Republicans go to one of those first two options in terms of rewriting it to comply. Both from a technical standpoint and a practical standpoint, this probably won't survive. From a technical standpoint, there's just multiple reasons why this is going to be hard to get around the Byrd Rule that are not worth getting into. And also practically, there were already a lot of Republican senators grumbling about this, and you've already had a few, like Josh Hawley, celebrating the parliamentarian's decision here. So this will just kind of be the perfect excuse to put the nail in the so-called coffin. That'd be my speculation. So this will be a key aspect of what Republicans decide to do over the next couple days. Do they attempt a rewrite, or do they leave this bird dead in the nest? Assuming that does stay out of the bill, Republicans have lost another big revenue raiser. What does that mean for the tax cuts in the bill, and how do Republicans plan to comply with the Byrd Rule as it relates to deficit spending and not adding to the deficit after 10 years? All right, thanks for watching, guys. If you found this helpful, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos on the One Big Beautiful Bill and all things tax.